Welcome back to the Gates Technology YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to enable full drive encryption on Windows, Mac, and Linux. On Windows, there's a little bit of a difference between the Windows Home editions and every other edition, whereas you need to install a separate program, and with Windows Server, you need to install the feature before you can use it. Now, why is encryption in general important? Well, basically, it keeps unwanted eyes off of your data and what you're doing. So, for example, if you go to google.com, it has that green padlock, and it's also secured with SSL. What that means is if you input any important information like a username and password or credit and debit card information, that means anyone watching the network and trying to see what you're doing, they can't see that information and they can't take it. It will just look like gibberish to them. They will be able to see that you went to google.com, but other than that, they can't see what you're doing. Now, before we get into it, the reason it's important on a computer is so if you ever lose it or it gets stolen, you know your data is safe and the person who stole it or person who found it, if you lost it, they can't see any of your data. So no documents, no pictures, nothing. They can't see any of that. All right, so let's get into it. First up is Windows 10 Home, and that's what most people should be using. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do when you're on Windows 10 Home is open up your internet browser of choice. I'm using Chrome, and go type in VeraCrypt. Now, I have the link for this in the description, but it should be veracrypt.fr as the domain. And then under downloads, click on MSI installer, so the second option under where it says Windows, and then download that. And then open it, and now you can close out of your browser. So what VeraCrypt is basically Bitlocker, but free and open source, and you can use it on Windows 10 Home and Linux and Mac OS and really anything else. But go ahead and click I agree to the license agreement, next, and then install. And after you click install, you'll get this popped up. Just click yes, because you do need administrator privileges to run this program and install it. And click no on this dialog that pops up. Now, once you get it installed, go ahead and double click on the VeraCrypt icon on your desktop. And then once you have it open, click on create new volume or create volume right here. And now this is really cool because you have 3 different options you can do. You can encrypt like a flash drive or an external hard drive. You could encrypt a folder on your computer. This is probably the best bet if you don't want to encrypt your entire operating system. However, I'm going to be showing you how to encrypt your entire operating system. So let's go ahead and select encrypt the system partition for the entire drive and click next and then yes. And it will ask you if you want to do a normal encryption or a hidden one. Hidden, you shouldn't have to do unless you're dealing with things like the criminal underground, the US government, just normal things that most people won't be dealing with. So go ahead and click next and select encrypt the Windows system partition and then click next. And this will be more dependent on what your setup is. On my main computer, this is just a virtual machine I'm showing you this in. But on my main computer, I'll have to click multi-boot. So what that means is you'll have 2 different operating systems or 2 of the same operating systems on your computer, on one drive specifically. So for example, on Mac laptops, they have this thing called Boot Camp. And what that lets you do is install Windows on your Mac as well, but also keep Mac OS installed, obviously. So what it does is it splits the hard drive pretty much in 2, or SSD pretty much in 2, and it will make it to where you have 2 operating systems on one computer, so you can switch between them just by turning it off and on. For most users, single boot will be your option. It does not count if it has more than one user on the computer, as that's all in the operating system. Go ahead and click Next, and then leave this default and click Next. Now, it's going to ask for a password. Make sure this is secure. If this is not secure, well, you might as well just not even do this. So I'm just going to make mine password. And then go ahead and click Next. And you can display the password as well, just to make sure that you have it exactly how you want it. And then click Next. And yeah, if it's short like mine and not that good, it will tell you that your password is not good. So once you're on this screen, you'll see that it says collecting random data. So basically, you just want to move your mouse around as randomly as possible. And for as long as possible. I usually only go until the progress bar down there is fully filled. And I usually pick up my mouse and kind of jiggle it around in the air like I just don't care before putting it back down onto the mouse pad. So once that progress bar is full, just go ahead and click Next. What that does is it basically just makes your encryption security a lot more secure. And here you can see your keys. You don't have to worry about that. Go ahead and click Next. Now, I highly, highly recommend using a rescue disk, which is basically just a USB flash drive that you run some stuff on that is made by VeraCrypt. I'm not going to be doing it in this video. If this were my actual operating system install instead of a virtual machine, I would 100% do this. But since it's just a virtual machine, I'm going to skip it. And click Next, and then click Next again. And so where it says wipe mode, go ahead and leave that at none. But if you know that you have a hard drive and not an SSD, do not do this to an SSD, because it wears down the life of it. Basically, what the wipe mode is doing is going over every sector in the hard drive. So all of the data in the hard drive is being overwritten multiple times. As you can see, 35 pass Gutman, as it's called, goes over that data 30 times or 35 times with random data. That makes it to where it's impossible or very, very difficult to recover data from that hard drive. With an SSD, like I said, if you have an SSD, do not do this with it, because that reduces the lifespan of that SSD. With a hard drive, go ahead and do it. This will take quite a while to do. So if you do it, I suggest doing 3-pass for... So if you do use this, I suggest using 3-pass because that's a happy medium between super secure and taking forever. And go ahead and click Next, and then Test. So after you click Test, it's going to pop up this dialog. So basically what this is saying is, hey, this is just a test. We're going to restart your computer to see if what we put on your boot manager works. If not, no big deal. Just press escape and you'll be fine. So yeah, go ahead and click OK. I'll show you what that means. Your computer will restart during this. So just go ahead and wait for that to restart. All right, so when it turns back on, you'll see it just is a black screen where it says password and then a little underscore. So this is where you enter your password the first time. So The password for encryption and the password for your operating system can be and should be completely separate in different passwords. For me, this is password. As you can see, when you type it in, it shows little asterisks. And go ahead and press enter. And next up, it will ask you for a PIM. Now, I did not check that, and if you're following exactly what I did, you shouldn't have either. But go ahead and press enter. And if it was all correct, so if your password was correct, and if you use the PIM and you enter that correctly, it will go ahead and turn on and boot in. That was just a test of it. And when it boots back on and you log back in, it will automatically launch the VeraCrypt program saying, hey, that test was successful and you did it correctly. Let's go ahead and start encrypting. But now that you see this program, go ahead and come over here and click encrypt and then click OK. And yes. What that more legal notice was saying is if you have a recovery disk, nope. But once you click encrypt, it will kind of sit there for a second and then start encrypting all your drives. That can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 days or longer, depending on how much data you have, how fast your computer is, and how slow your hard drive or SSD is. Now, this is a pretty much completely fresh install of Windows that I'm doing this on. The only thing I've added to it is Google Chrome and now VeraCrypt. There we go. Now, as you can see, it'll show you how long you have left. For me, it'll take like 5 or 10 minutes. And you can use your computer while this is happening. So as you can see, I can go to Google Chrome and go to the web store and just browse around the different web themes and such. But I will be back when this is done encrypting. And now that it's done, it will pop up with a little dialogue saying, hey, we successfully finished. You're good to go. You're fully encrypted, or at least your operating system is. And then it has another note down here saying, if this is a non-system VeraCrypt encrypted volume, you will have to enable either auto mount on boot or mount it manually each time. Just simply click OK and then click finish. And now your computer is fully encrypted. And if you restart it, which I will do real quick, it will prompt you for that password before you even get into Windows, because it needs that password in order to decrypt all the data. So as you can see here, it's asking me for the password. Mine is just password, and then just press enter and enter twice, and it will authorize and then load into Windows. And when it's done, it will be exactly the same as it was before you encrypted, only this time your data is safe. Now let's move on to the next one. It's still going to be Windows, but it is going to be pretty much completely differently. Now, remember, you can use VeraCrypt on Windows Server or on any Windows version as well as Mac and Linux. But I find it a lot easier to use Bitlocker, which is Microsoft's own VeraCrypt-like program. Now we are in Windows 10 Pro. And the way you can tell the difference is if you click on the Windows button down here and click on the gear icon here or settings, and then click System and scroll all the way down and click About, it will tell you, oh, this is Windows 10 Education Edition. It will tell you which kind of Windows edition you have. As you can see, this one's Windows Education instead of Pro because I accidentally installed the wrong one. So what are the differences between Windows 10 Home and we'll just say Pro in this case? Now, the main difference is if you open up Control Panel, which you can do by clicking where it says type here to search and typing in Control Panel, or just Control and clicking Control Panel. Let me do large icons. You'll see it has BitLocker Drive Encryption in here, whereas on Windows 10 Home, it doesn't. But if you don't have a compatible computer, I will show you how to check that. And you try to turn it on, it will say, hey, you can't do this. So what a trusted platform module is basically it's a way to double check and verify that, oh, this is actually what it is. This is actually the real drive. Nothing's different. And same with programs and a few other things. Personally, I don't see much use for it in smaller businesses, but in larger businesses and where you host servers and stuff like that, it is fairly important. All right. So the way you can bypass this message is by where it says type here to search, type in GP edit, and it will pop up with edit group policy. You're going to want to open that and close out of that, the Bitlocker window. And now that you have the local group policy editor open, right-click the arrow next to where it says Administrative Templates, and then do the same thing to Windows Components and the same thing to Bitlocker Drive Encryption. And then click on Operating System Drives, and then double-click on the third option here, or where it says Require Additional Authentication at Startup. Now that you have this open, click on Enabled, and then Allow Bitlocker without a compatible TPM, which is this first checkbox right here in this left-hand side column. But make sure that is checked. If it is not checked, then you won't be able to use Bitlocker. Now just click OK, and then you're free to close out of that. Now if you try to turn on Bitlocker again, it will verify and instead of pop up with that, hey, you can't do this message. Now, when that is finished checking to see if you can actually do it, which, surprise, surprise, you can, you don't need a TPM for encryption. It's just a verifier, really. That's all it's there for, at least for this use case. Just click Next, and then click Next. Now, as you can see, it's saying it's a good idea to back up critical files, so anything like documents, photos, or anything else like that that you can't lose, and if you do lose, it's a big deal, and you won't be able to get back. Now, I suggest putting it in a zip file and uploading it to like Google Drive or some other cloud platform like Dropbox, or if you have a local network storage device, I would put it there. But go ahead and click Next after you've done that. Go ahead and click Next, and then enter a password. You can use a USB drive. I'm just going to go with a password. It is a lot easier and more convenient. Now, like before, I'm going to use the password. Click Next, and then I would click Print the recovery key. Keep this in a safe location. I would save it to a USB flash drive, actually, but what I'm going to do is a little workaround for it where you print the recovery key to a PDF on the desktop. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't have any recovery. The reason I'm doing this is because I don't have a USB flash drive handy at the moment. Now, depending on how old or how new your computer is which option you're going to select. I usually just click Encrypt Entire Drive. But if it's a brand new computer, choose Encrypt Use Disk Space Only. So let's continue and click New Encryption Mode. If you plan on removing this hard drive or SSD from this computer, or the computer you're running Bitlocker on, select Compatible Mode. However, 99% of the time, it's going to be New Encryption Mode. Click Next, and then run Bitlocker system check. Make sure that's checked, and then click Continue. Well, you don't actually have to make sure it's checked. It's just to make sure that you can actually log in after it encrypts. It's a very good idea to keep that box checked. Now, it should pop up with a notification. If it does, go ahead and click it and click Restart Now. If it doesn't, you can restart it from the Windows Start menu right here, just by going to Power and then Restart. All right, so now as you can see, after it's turned back on, it's going to ask for a password to unlock the drive, much like the Windows 10 Home VeraCrypt one did. You're going to want to type in your password. Make sure they are secure passwords. Otherwise, there's not really too much of a point to encrypting your drive. And then press Enter. And once you press Enter, it will decrypt the drive if it's been encrypted already. In this case, it hasn't. This was just a test. But once you press Enter, it will load up and work like it normally does. And now, as you can see, it looks completely normal. With this recovery key, make sure you keep this safe, because if you don't have these, go away. Because if you don't have these, you won't be able to get your data back if you forget your encryption password. Now, the way you get Bitlocker on Windows Server is completely different to almost every Windows version. If I type in Bitlocker in here, you'll see Manage Bitlocker in the control panel right there. But if you click it, nothing happens. So let's go ahead and open up the control panel and go to the large view. As you can see, Bitlocker is not in here at all. That's because you have to install it. So if you come back to that server manager and go to Manage and then Add Roles and Features, just click Next until you get to the Features tab right here. You don't need it on any other tab. Now, select Bitlocker Drive Encryption and then Add Features. Go ahead and click Next and then Install. While we're waiting for this to install, let's go ahead and do that same trick we did on Windows, well, in my case, Education, but in your case, Windows Pro. And let's open up GPEdit, which is Group Policy Editor, and then do the exact same steps as before. And then enable that and OK, and then close. Now, with Bitlocker, you have to restart it. Now that Windows Server is back up, you'll notice that unlike with the others, when it restarted, it did not ask you for a password immediately. Instead, it just asked for your user password. In my case, that was administrator. That's because you didn't actually set up Bitlocker. All you did was install everything it needed to work. So what you're going to have to do is come back in here and type in Control Panel and go to Bitlocker Drive Encryption. As you can see, that's now an option here. And click Turn on Bitlocker. And if you didn't do that workaround while it was installing, go ahead and do it before you do this. And just type in your password. And it's the exact same steps on here as it is on Windows Pro. And it's the exact same steps as before. So let's move on to Linux. Now, with Linux, you can either use VeraCrypt, or while you're installing Linux, you simply just select that you want to use that. So for me, I'm going to have to reinstall it just so I can show you. Now, as you can see, we have the installer open here. It's going to ask you if you want to try it or install. So we'll just go through the installation like normal, select our language and keyboard layout, and then click continue. And then I like to install third-party updates, and then continue. Now my screen size is just adjusted to what it actually is. But if you have something else installed on here, just make sure that you have all that data backed up. And where it says erase disk and install Ubuntu or use the full disk, you want the one where it has advanced features under it. Click on advanced features and then click on use LVM with the new Ubuntu installation or whatever distribution you use, and then encrypt it. And then click OK and install now. It will then ask you for a security key. Mine is just password. With this, it will tell you if it's a good or bad password. As you can see, mine is saying it's horrible and that I should probably get a different one. I highly, highly suggest that you use a very secure password for this. Now, I don't normally click overwrite empty disk space, but that's pretty much only because I have an SSD instead of a hard drive. Like I said before, with an SSD, it just adds extra wear to it that it doesn't need. Now, if you do a recovery key, as you can see, it's just a bunch of random long strings. You will need to save this somewhere. I usually don't do this, but if you do this with any mission critical stuff like financial or client data, you will need to do that. And the way you can do that is just by plugging a USB drive in and just getting it off that way. Another way you can do it is by pressing Control-Alt-T and just typing in Firefox, and that will open up Firefox eventually. There it is. And you can enable the recovery key, save it there, save it to the home. There you go. And then just in Firefox, type in ssavr.com. And this is a secure way to do links and file sharing between devices on your own network. Simply click upload and then go to home, and it didn't save it. Okay, you have to click install now for it to save it. Like I said, I've never done that recovery key. Just simply, after you do install now, find where this is. I did it under home, which is the default directory it saves it, and then click open and it will upload it. And there you go. You're good to go. You have a security key or your recovery key there. After that, it's going to ask if you want to write changes to disk. Click continue. It should ask you again just to double check and verify. Oh, apparently not. Okay. Select your time zone, click continue, and this is where you enter all your fun login details. And you can use Active Directory too, which is really cool. But that is how you do encryption on Linux. And you can also use VeraCrypt for this. I'm not going to show you how. If you use Linux, you're probably tech savvy enough to figure this out on your own. All right, so next up is Mac OS. So let's get into that. All right, so one thing I love about Mac OS is they make it super, super easy to enable full drive encryption. It's really just like 2 clicks. So the first thing you're going to want to do is open up System Preferences, which you can get by coming down here or going to the Launchpad and finding it there, or just press Command Space and then type it in there. Now, once you have System Preferences open, you're going to want to go to Security and Privacy, which is in this top little rack of icons. And then once you're in Security and Privacy, you're going to want to come to the second tab that says File Vault, and then click this lock icon right here and enter your password and click Turn on File Vault. If, like me, it says Turn off File Vault, that means you already have it turned on, and most modern Macs will have this turned on by default. If it's not turned on for you and you turn it on now, the encryption should take about 15 minutes or so. It really just depends on how fast your Mac is and how much data you have to encrypt. Now, it gives you an option to save the recovery key to iCloud or to not to. I always choose not to save it to iCloud, so I don't really know what benefits you get from saving it to iCloud, but you will need to save that recovery key. If you choose iCloud, I'm pretty sure it will make it a lot easier. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new, and I hope this video helps you out with securing your data. If you liked this video, please like it. If you didn't, dislike it. And if you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and click that subscribe button and hit that bell.